Hello and welcome to a bonus edition of what is it? Oh yeah, Frolics.
Yep.
We're on our A game today. We're on the pig's back now, boy.
Oh yes, indeed.
So if you remember last time we talked about bloody Stumps Samurai, and it's a good excuse to
show that again.
It again. Yes.
Yeah. Great book.
Yeah. So while looking back at the video for editing it, I realized there was a section towards the beginning where I was banging on about, and this sent me down this fascinating rabbit hole, which I'm going to talk to you about. And then in all the excitement, I forgot to actually talk about it. Plus, there's another comic kind of related to it, which we're gonna which Nick hasn't been able to get a copy of, but I'm gonna tell him about. Tell you and Nick, that's you, viewer. By the way, I'm talking directly to you. Don't get too excited and spill your tea or whatever you're drinking. Yes. So the bit of business I wanted to mop up. So in the kind of not introductory, so at the back, but the afterwards, I guess, or essays about this, they mention novelist Nanjo Norio's The Cruel Code of the Samurai, or Bushido Zankoku Monogatari, and the series Stories of Cruelty in Japan, Nihon Zankoku Monogatari, 1959 to 1960, edited by ethnologist Miyamoto Tsuneichi. And they also talk about Jacopetti's Mondokane film becoming a hit, and the subsequent Zankoku boom. So Zankoku is cruelty, basically. And
never good when there's a cruelty boom, really.
No, it's yeah, that's for sure. But this one proved quite fruitful.
Okay, well, okay, excellent.
So the reason this kind of interested me is, so as you probably are as well, Nick, I'm vaguely kind of familiar with, yes, in the mid 60s there were a few kind of dark kind of jidaigeki movies that were, yes, about, innocence being crushed underneath the oppressive feudal system, right? And they've got titles like Brutal Tales of Chivalry, or those
Oxen Split Torture.
Yes, a little bit later on as well. But a lot of them did have this Zankoku in the title, cruelty. And then they quickly, of course, spread to the world of pink films, right? And there's a whole bunch of, like, Wakamatsu Koji made a whole bunch of something Zankoku, and some of them are like period, and then some of them are like more modern day, so they would have been like modern day Zankoku stories, and they were often like anthologies, and they were still doing these things into like the 70s and early 80s. There's like a Yamamoto Shinya made a whole bunch of these interchangeable cruelty anthologies, some of them period, some of them different like time periods in one film, and some of them are really good and really nasty and mean, and some of them are not so great, and they all have basically the same word in the title but just in a slightly different order, so it's really hard to figure out. And they were retitled when they were re-released on video, and so it's a bit of a rabbit hole I've been going down, because it's very difficult to search for that, especially in English. You kind of have to use a little bit of Japanese if you're going to get anywhere, trying to figure out, is this film that's showing in a rep theater worth my time going to, or is it actually just this other film that was also released on DVD, which I've already seen twice accidentally because it's got 3 titles? Am I going to pay to go and see it again
in the cinema?
Yeah, that kind of thing. But what was fascinating to me was just the fact that, yes, if you went back to these couple of books, which I guess were bestsellers, and then at the same time, and I searched for this online, it does seem that if you look up Mondokane and a lot of the other films that were subsequently released in Japan, similar Mondo films, it is referred to as the Zankoku boom. So for me, I just found it interesting to find the source point of this kind of thing that lasted for probably a lot longer than you would have expected, right? The cruelty boom.
In some ways, although in other ways, it's not that surprising when you can. Okay, when you consider some of the interests and stuff that Japan's a big country, and I think this is something that when you have that many people, there's no such thing as a niche interest, because there's just so many people that whatever it is, there's going to be a big enough group of people interested in it that it's bigger than a niche would be anywhere else, which is one of the things I like about Japan. Yeah, I feel like no matter what you're into, you're going to be able to find some like-minded folks to enjoy what that thing is.
Yeah. Okay, that was fair play. I think you managed to avoid all the major pitfalls there quite elegantly, Nick. Well done.
I do my best. Yes. But I think that so Teruo Ishii's movies, he did a brace of these, right? But would they fall under that, or would they be something else?
I think so. I mean, that whole series with like Inferno of Torture and Cruel Story of the Shogunate's Women, or whatever it's called. These things,
right? And he did some Yakuza. He did some Yakuza-based ones as well. I think.
Yeah, and I think that's got Zankoku in the title as well, isn't it? Exactly. So it's just it's fascinating to me that I like when you discover the wellspring, right? Because
the Rosetta Stone of cruelty.
Yeah. So I just thought that was kind of interesting, because I wouldn't have thought to consider that it was this kind of, because I think the way it fits into this was, I think, part of that book, the Nanjo one in particular, or the other one, would have been stories of oppression of Burakumin, right? So
right, and there would be, I mean, in a lot of, and even just in some cases in just non-specifically Zankoku-based things, like I'm thinking about the Sleepy Eyes of Death, for example. You often cut to scenes of Christians being crucified upside down or tortured and stuff, just as a kind of a matter of possibly historical fact.
Yeah.
So
also, I mean, it's just interesting for me to find another example. Recently, I haven't actually finished it yet, and I haven't watched this. For the Magic Morning Wood podcast, we're planning to watch a Czech film from, is it 1966 or 1967, somewhere around there, called Witch Hammer, which is based on a novel as well. But it's kind of interesting because I don't know how widespread that film was when it was new, or if it had played art houses around the world or something. But it seems to me that you have Witch Hammer, and then very soon after you have Witchfinder General and Mark of the Devil and the Devils and all those things. So I'm wondering if Witch Hammer is the starting off point for that mini kind of cruelty to witches boom.
Right. Okay.
So anyway, this is the kind of thing that I waste my time thinking about.
Okay. So that's one part of this, but there's a second part. Right?
Yes, and maybe more interesting, slightly less indulgent. So so we didn't mention, because we thought we would bring it up, that Bloody Stump's Samurai was actually released in a Hindi translation, surprisingly, and the story of how that happened is documented in Stupid Guy Goes to India.
Which I should say, I tried to get a copy of this valiantly, because I wanted to read it and I wanted to discuss it with Clive. And as it turned out, he sniped maybe the last copy in existence
Yes,
that was for sale anywhere directly before I had a chance. I went to the website and it was sold out moments after Clive saying, "Oh, I've got it. It's coming to me. It'll be here in a couple of days." And I was like, "Okay, perfect." And that was it. And you can go to, you know, whatever version of, you know, eBay. Well, maybe not eBay, but certainly Amazon. None of them seem to have it anymore. It's just gone.
Quite unfair as well, because I went to all those outlets, couldn't find it. Didn't think of actually going to the publisher's website,
which I recommended.
Blast Comics or Blast Publications, yeah. And you said, oh, and you pointed out it was still there, and then I swiped it from under your nose. Yeah, no, and yeah, it was the last one, and there is actually a sequel as well. Stupid Guy Goes Back to India.
Right, but
that
that's
one,
even less available, it seems.
Yes. But on the strength of this, I would quite like to read it, because this is actually quite good.
Well, it's. I mean, what little I know about it, it sounded really interesting.
It is very interesting. So yeah, the story here was so it wasn't Hiroshi Hirata himself. It was this guy, Yukichi Yamamatsu. That's a drawing, by the way, just in case you can't. That's a real photo. He looks exactly like.
Yes, yeah.
So he got it into his head that it was like an epiphany, or whatever an epiphany that's wrong is. I don't know.
Okay, yes, yeah. A stupid idea.
Yeah, there we go, yeah. He thought, oh yeah, I should try and sell Japanese comics in India, because he thought it was like a totally untapped market. And
it's a big market, right?
Yes. And he went, it's quite interesting actually. He went there, he didn't just go there with Bloody Samurai. He actually went there with, it's a bit difficult to tell actually, even now I've read the comic, it's kind of a bit difficult to tell exactly. It seems like such a stupid idea in retrospect. Because it wasn't just he stayed in Japan and like hired some Indian speaking people living in Japan, and casually, at his own pace, slowly translated it in his own place he was comfortable, and no, he goes to India and like tries to rent a place and set up his own studio and like hire local people to. It's madness, really. And I don't think he goes there, he doesn't go there. He goes on a tourist visa, basically.
Right. Wow.
And doesn't speaks neither Hindi or English.
It's brilliant.
Yeah, the hubris is big with this one. And so the idea was he actually had a whole raft of different types of Japanese comics. It wasn't just the Bloody Samurai, but I think, at least as the way I could follow it in this comic, that's the only one that basically ends up
getting translated and
because it's a major headache, as you can imagine. So and there's some interesting tidbits. So apparently there's a scene near the beginning of the comic where he tries to phone Hiroshi Hirata to like explain what he's doing and like get his blessing or whatever. And apparently Hiroshi Hirata can't hear anything he's saying on the phone because he'd recently taken a trip to America. He'd gone to a firing range, accidentally bought like way too many bullets, but insisted on getting his money's worth. So he basically deafened himself.
Brilliant. So sorry to interrupt, but when? So I mean, because the book itself was written in the 60s, right? From remember. So like so when is this happening? Is this happening in the 70s, the 80s? When has he decided to attempt this?
I think I don't have an exact date for you, but I think we're talking early 2000s, something like that.
Wow. So way later on than when the book's actually originally.
And I've been to India, and so some of this rung very true to me, like things like getting in taxis and like, why are there two drivers, and one of them is not doing anything, and just always, without fail, taking you not to the place where you want to go. You go via someone's brother's carpet shop or a stained glass every single day. Oh, we just go this way, and you just kind of roll with it because you can't really do anything about it. And there's a lot of fascinating stuff like where he talks about like a rickshaw driver taking him somewhere, and he does do some deal with someone about some printing or something like that, and then he tries to switch drivers, and there's like fist fights in the street, and he doesn't realize that these drivers get commissions, and things like that. So it can be troublesome if you don't stick with your driver of choice and stuff like that, which is all really, really quite interesting. He also has a part of his colon missing. I believe it's called the sigmoid colon, because he had cancer or something. So his toilet requirements sound fairly stressful. Like it sounds like he has to rush to the toilet like 7 or 8 times in a row. It goes like through this, like first it just gets these little pellets, and then when it's out away, you have to rush back, and then there's like this stream of diarrhea. Then you have to go back again and again, which would be a pain in the ass in Tokyo, but in India, India's not a I remember finding it quite difficult to find public toilets in India.
And does he speak at all to why? Because I mean, obviously, the immediate question is of all of the things you could bring, from a massive amount of Japanese comics that have been created since the 1950s, right? Why the one about outcasts? Why the one about I should say I mean, the Borakumin have, there is an untouchables class in India. Is this why? Was this part of his thinking, or is that just a weird accident?
No, you would have assumed, right? I would have thought that as well. I thought there was some thought had gone into it, but no, at least he doesn't mention it. It's more than he just seems to really love that comic, and
well, I mean, it's a great comic.
And a brace of it. There's another thing that's quite interesting here that something I saw. He talks about this weird kind of. I'll just read it, and makes more sense. A long, long time ago, they used to say that manga, meaning the 4-panel adult-oriented kind, was drawn by intellectuals, but the rental shop gekiga, the alternative dramatic kind, was drawn by idiots. There's a picture of an idiot. but basically he goes on to explain how so I didn't realize this. So Osamu Tezuka, when he joined the manga shudan, or the manga association, here we go, a manga association founded before the war by Ryuichi Yokoyama and a core group of others. They were said to be strongly opposed to child-oriented manga and gekiga, and at the time, Tezuka's becoming a member was exceptional. So that's kind of interesting, right? Because we tend to think of him as the Godfather, right now.
Right.
But back in the day, he was like the upstart. That there was some even older generation of which I don't even know what those manga would really look like. But his main point was that even he was a bit of a snob, apparently, Tezuka, even though he was a victim of this snobbery himself.
Right,
I think he would be more supportive. So then he talks about, so there was this whole generation of gekiga artists who, when they saw that other people who hadn't gone through, a fine arts training. Right. So then he lists all these other artists, some of which I'd heard of, some I haven't. So I'll throw these at you. It sounds like another rabbit, some rabbit to go down. Satoru Yoshikawa, Hiroshi Harata, Toshiyama Masaoka, Takao Saito, I think that's called the 13 guy, right? Masaharu Yamamoto, Goseki Kojima, that one sounds familiar. Sanpei Shirato.
Oh, Goseki Kojima is Lone from Cub.
Oh, right. Okay.
The artist. Yeah.
Right. Akira Sugiyama, Masaki Sato, Enatsujiro, Sachio Memoto, Keiichi Miyahara. But that's interesting, right? Because I don't think we wouldn't have known that like Goseki Kojima, for example, and Takao Saito, but I don't think we had any idea that they represented this type of I don't know what you'd call them, like like autodidactic or working class kind of versus this.
Right.
That's a little fissure that we didn't know existed, right? So,
the angry young men of the manga world.
Stupid guy goes to India proves to have been quite informative.
Just quickly, can you tell me who is the artist who drew the? I mean,
I think it's him. I think it's Yukichi Yamamatsu. There's no other credit. So
okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, there we go. There's your bonus. Your bonus Prolix Comics Bollocks. So
all right.
If you good luck. But if you can find a copy, go for it. It's quite entertaining.
Okay.
See you then.